Hey guys, Scallywag checking in for another Bonsai devlog. At the end of my last devlog, I had a mostly working implementation for brushes. It still wasn't perfect, the UI needed a lot of work, and in particular, I didn't even have a text box yet in the engine. So I've been hard at work for the last couple weeks implementing some of the sort of missing quality of life stuff and putting some polish on the feature in general. I also went on a couple fairly major yak shaves, which we'll go over later. So the first thing I want to show off is the invert function. As you can see, there's a little checkbox here that, as you might imagine, inverts the current noise function. One of the primary uses I've found for this so far is to invert a sphere and then change the mode to remove to clip the noise function to a sphere. By itself, that's not particularly exciting, but if we toggle on brush follows cursor, then you can kind of just paint noise into your scene as if you had a paintbrush. Then where this gets really cute is if we change the modifier to surface, we only paint the noise onto the surface of whatever's in the scene already. The first time I did this and saw it actually working on the screen, I almost crapped myself because I thought it was so cool. I also added white noise to the types of noise that you can paint into the world. Not particularly exciting, but you know, white noise is a type of noise, so I figured we should have it. And then lastly, I worked on the sort of settings panel over here, the brush settings panel over here a little bit. I implemented a text box, so you can now click on the text here and type whatever you want. And we can save that. It'll get a brush extension when you save it. You can also manually type the brush extension if you want. You can duplicate, which gives you a new version of the same brush. So if you wanted to change the brush slightly, but not overwrite your old one. And then you can import brushes. So if we wanted to do a castle wall brush or something, we could do that. Oh, right, it imports these settings as well. So that's that. Oh, this brush it looks like was a test brush at some point, but if we import, maybe this one is more real. Yeah, that looks like a little bit more like a castle wall. Um, Anyhow, the last thing that I wanted to go over, and this is more of a technical thing, is the sort of input yak shave that I went on to get this text box working. So the actual text box was super easy, but the input on Windows turned out to be a pain in the ass. My Alt key wasn't working, which is something that I just sort of noticed by chance while I was doing this. And let's go into why. So the yak shave started when I noticed that my control key was working and my shift key was working, but my alt key was not. If you notice, I am alting, and alt is not alting. So you would hope that this would be a fairly easy problem to fix. I would think that I would just open up my editor, go to the thing that maps the key codes to this input struct, and all would be well. Unfortunately, when we open up input.h, which is where that input struct is, and we look and we see that Win32 key code is mapped to VK menu for alt, which is in fact the correct mapping. We can confirm by going to the MSDN documentation, and here it is. VK menu is the alt key. So like WTF, mate. So after a few hours of combing the internet and the Microsoft documentation for clues, I was able to divine that the alt key on Windows has two kind of hidden behaviors. The first is that if you just tap the alt key, your application appears to hang. What's actually happening here is the WSSys menu is becoming active, and even though my application doesn't have anything in the system menu, Windows insists on activating that menu anyways, and that menu starts pumping messages. So that was one mystery down. The second mystery was that my application wasn't receiving keystroke events for the Alt key nor for any other key while the Alt key was held depressed. It turns out that in addition to WM key down and key up, which are the default window messages you get for keystrokes, there is WM sys key down and key up, which are the messages you get when the Alt key is depressed. If you know why they did that, I'd be interested to know in the comments, but I'm not going out of my way to figure it out. So with the input yak shave down, there was one more yak to shave. This one had to do with the noise functions deteriorating in quality when far from the origin. Until now, I've been doing a naive mapping into absolute space, and that got me actually surprisingly far. The problem with this is that when you're far from the origin, you lose a lot of floating point accuracy and your noise function starts to visually deteriorate. I started to see this deterioration at about 50,000 units from the origin, which at the scale that I'm planning for this game is roughly 5 kilometers or like 3 miles. So that's like kind of far, but not really far enough. There are several solutions to this problem. I went with kind of the easiest one, which is just to tile the noise infinitely. So almost all the noises I'm using are cellular noises, Veroni noise, Perlin noise. These operate on a lattice that's sort of overlaid on top of the voxel grid. The nice thing about this is you actually tile in lattice coordinates, and so I measured the tiling to be okay up to about 4K, so that's 4096 lattice points. And so even at the smallest scale of like detail noise that you would use, that's probably at least about 10,000 world coordinates before you repeat, and that sounds to me like more than enough. I'm going to be working more on the noise functions and world gen in the coming weeks, and so I'll go into more detail on this in subsequent videos. So that's about it for this update. There's a link to the source code and pre-built binaries in the description if you want to check it out. There's also a Discord server if you want to ask questions or just come hang out. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.